Well, Adam, thanks for being on. Good to connect, hang out. For those that, in our story, you guys helped plant New City Church. You were with us for 4 years in Raleigh before you and Emily planted Citizens Church in Kernersville, and you guys just celebrated 4 years. So
Yep,
look at that. You know all there is to need to know. Today
that's
we're going
right.
to talk about a couple of things: culture dependency, wanting to quit, jokingly, but maybe not so much, kicking a demon out of your church, and probably hit on some grief as well. You lost your dad recently. Just practically how you've been working through that, and how maybe that's changed how you counsel other people. But let's start at the beginning, or start this culture dependency is a thing that's pretty important to you. What do you mean by that, and what does that look like? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean that's just been like, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, but it's just true. My upbringing was, especially like in the church and discipleship, was good Christians do this and don't do this. It was like we weren't fundamentalists, but it was totally like you don't do X, Y, and Z, and if you do, there's something wrong with you, and you need to like willpower your way out of that. It wasn't until New City that there was a culture of like, wait, I can be classified as a leader, but also have struggles
Mm.
because that was not what I was used to. And so that really started it in my life being like, oh, I don't have to be afraid to struggle because we struggle. That means, oh, I still need a savior. Like I know I need a savior when I'm saved, but then it's up to me to keep me
Yeah.
to when it's like, no, wait, he is continuing to work. And so it really started in like my life and wanting to be a person that understands, you don't get to like excuse away sin, but at the same time, understanding this is a part of the human experience, especially walking with Jesus. And so that started in my life, really the freedom at New City Church in Raleigh, to be a dependent person. Like it's okay to actually say, man, I am completely dependent on the kindness and goodness of God to keep me going. And so then fast forward as we plant a church, man, that was just one of the values that we knew we wanted. Like churches all the time talk about like come as you are, that kind of thing, but we truly in both the preaching and the elements of our church, like we just want to create a culture where we understand, man, there is dependency solely on the Lord. So for one thing that we do at Citizens that I love is we end every single service with communion. Um, and we just started doing that because I recognize that that was a visual representation of like, they're not going to remember my stories. They're not going to remember my main point. They may even complain like the music was too loud, but the last thing that they're going to hear and see, and then you add in the communion elements of like taste and feel, is the body broken for you, the blood poured out for you. So every Sunday we talk about how like, man, this centers our dependency. Like we are nothing without the sacrifice of Jesus. And so I mean, we just try to look through that lens in everything that we're doing. And I hope that it's an overflow of my life, right? That um, the things that I'm preaching at church, the elements that we use are an overflow of me being a man who's like, man, I am every day dependent on God because I know like truly who I am. And I say it all the time. Like if you really knew who I was, you may not want me your pastor. Now I'm not doing like illegal things, I'm not doing crazy things, but it's just this idea of, man, we don't want to self-deprecate, but we also don't want to lose this sense of depravity. Like if God does not work in my life, who like I have no shot. And so I want my life to be an overflow, in how I lead the church in that way. So that's just kind of like, man, the catalyst behind that is
Yeah.
it's so necessary and it's needed. And I want other people to know, like, oh man, you are a mess right now. Well, that's good because your cleanliness is not what's upholding you right now.
Yeah.
It's your
I,
dependence on a God who can.
I feel like your story is probably uh, maybe perhaps a lot of people who grew up in the church, depending on the church they grew up with, probably have that same like I got to be good enough and do better.
Oh yeah.
Was it? I mean, I know you talk about New City, but also, I mean, you were at seminary now in Raleigh. You were newly married. I mean, you're also just getting older, so there's just like maturity. Was there like a passage or a moment or like what do you think maybe there isn't something specific you can point to that helped you start realize that we need Jesus and he covers us and it's not about doing good all the time or else I can't like be of use. I don't know. There's like a
I,
specific moment that started to change.
yeah, I mean, 100%. I can't remember. I don't even remember what book I was reading, but this guy talked about the perpetual weakening. And Second Corinthians 12 is what I go back to on that dependence. It's like Paul praying 3 times that you would remove my thorn. And the author was talking about how we have this idea, especially, and I did, right, that once we've been weak for a while, then we will get strong, because that's that whole passage, right? But the Lord responded to me, "It's in your weakness, Paul, that I get strength, or that my power is shown." And so, um, it reframed for me the mindset that, like, well, once I've suffered a little bit, then God will make me strong again. And the author was making the point, like, why would God ever risk um, you feeling like you have it all together now that you've suffered for a little while? And so it was almost like there are going to be things in your life that you may walk with a limp the rest of your life. But it's in that passage that we see like this perpetual weakening. It's not to like crush us in a bad way, but it's to crush us into this dependence that, like, oh, wait, I have not arrived. Like, I still am trying to live a life where in my weakness, somehow God gets the glory. Why he works like that, as a human, I'm like, no, God, it would be better if you would just make me less angry. Like, trust me, it would go better if I had more patience.
Yeah.
And of course, you want to grow in areas, but like that passage right there was this whole idea that, like, no, he is not trying to weaken me for a season. And then for the next season, Adam's like, oh, actually, I have this. Like, it might be a life of just complete. No, you keep praying to get better. There's this process of sanctification, which I fully believe in, and like we do grow. But at the same time, man, that reframed everything for me of like, man, I want to grow. I want to be honest. I want to confess sin. I want to repent. But at the same time, I want to understand that God says He'll do a lot in the weaknesses that we have, because I think it forces our dependence. And so, Second Corinthians 12 was a huge thing. And then, I think we talk about this too, like the mountaintops of Romans, 6, 7, and 8. Like Romans 6, God has saved us, nothing separates us. Romans 7 is like, I don't even know what's going on right now. And then Romans 8:1 starts with, there's now therefore no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. So it was like, okay, this is kind of the experience that I'm living. Like,
Yeah.
I wish I was further along, but thank God for his grace and what he's doing. And so those were some of the passages that really just came to light for me.
Any like rhythms and practices that you do or that you recommend for people to have this idea of it's easy to be like, hey, I'm going to be dependent, but then if we don't do anything that reminds us of our needs or keep going about our own way, we're not part of a local church, we don't do anything. Well, they're actually not.
Yeah.
I don't know if for you or for citizens where you lead, like, what does that look like practically? Like, what are practices, rhythms maybe you guys do or you do to help you?
Well, like I said, I kind of talked about it, citizens, like we want to create this culture where, like, I mean, even preaching the Bible, like we do that because we're dependent on God's word to do that.
Yeah.
We're really big prayers, like, we're not like, Brooklyn Tabernacle having a Tuesday night prayer meeting, but like we just try to focus on these elements of like, man, we are solely dependent on God, like communion. But personally, I mean, you got to find other guys that want to be dependent on God as well.
Mm.
Like, I have friends who actually know me and actually love me. Like, they know my temptations, they know my weaknesses. Setting up guardrails in your life. Like, I think it's a question of, if you're going to be dependent on the Lord, you have to ask this question. Then what has the chance to take you out? And
Yeah.
so many times as pastors, it's like, and it's this isn't original to me, but it's like money, sex, power. Like,
Yeah.
what's one of those that's going to take you out? Maybe a multitude. Like, I'm not really power hungry. Like, that's just not my MO, but like a wandering eye, 100% could take me out. So there are guardrails that are set up in my life because I know what's going to take me out. And so, I mean, we could talk about that more, but really just like true friendship, like true
Yeah.
guys who know the crevices of my heart, like
Yeah.
this is where I'm at. So, but that's one practical thing for me that's really helpful.
Yeah. I want to talk about, getting taken out. We'll talk about this. I think, and I did think we could circle back to this dependency because I'd be curious how this is shaped. A couple years ago, you were really considering like, I don't know if quitting is the right word because I like ministry because I kind of have this pet peeve of like if you're a pastor right now doesn't mean you have to be a pastor till you retire. Like that's not God calls us to love Him and love people and you can do that in any way. Like
Yeah.
I don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a pastor. So I don't not in like it's a failure to quit, but like you were like really struggling with like continuing on in this thing. And I know people listen to this obviously may not be in ministry vocationally a pastor themselves, but I think we've all been there, especially if you're maybe in an industry or career, maybe you start a company, you're doing something that you felt like this is what I was supposed to do. Like God called me to this and now I don't do it anymore. Can you just walk through to whatever extent you feel comfortable sharing a couple years ago what that process was like for you?
I it really just crescendoed with, I felt like I was letting people down left and right. And they were telling me, like, they were telling me I was letting them down. Like, there was a night that even we were walking through just difficult things at church, like staffing stuff. And we weren't that old. Like, this was like 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half. So we're like 2 years into the church. And man, just like things at church were happening. And then, like, out of the blue, I remember getting um, a text from a family member that was like, "You used to be our pastor, and now you just don't care about us at all." And I was like, first of all, I was really upset that it was a text because I was like, this should be a phone call or an in person. But like, these are people that I really poured into, and all of a sudden they're telling me that, like, you don't care about us at all. And it was like, I think what I was feeling around the church, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back when I received that. And I remember, like, man, just straight up crying, like weeping. And I've gotten more emotional 100% since I've had kids, like, especially like daughters. Like, I can, I can cry easily, but I don't weep. And that was the emotion then. And like, I just remember texting guys and being like, is this all it is? Like, we're only 2 years in, and I just feel like I'm letting everybody down. And, you know, uh, it was just difficult. So that's what spurred that on, was like, how, how do I continue to do this when people are just mad at me? And that is I hate that. Like, I hate if I even think that people are upset with me, which is one of those, like, I got to be dependent on the Lord. Like Galatians chapter 1 talks about, like, am I trying to please man or God?
Yeah.
And like, that's one of those things where, dude, it is such a temptation for me to please man. Like, I want to bend over backwards, not because I actually love you, but because I don't want you to be mad at me. And so that's something that, like, yeah, I mean, that was just, it was difficult. And it was a moment of like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. Now I got through it, and then we've had other situations come up that have, like, do I still want to do this? And we can talk about that if you'd like to. But that was where it started, was that whole feeling like letting everybody down, and then getting a very personal text of like, no, you don't care about us at all as a pastor.
Yeah.
Like, what?
So, and this was a time period. I mean, I know you were talking to a lot of guys trying to figure out what to do. I mean, how long were you like, I don't know that I slash don't want to do this anymore before you think maybe started to change for you? And what do you think maybe caused that change to not want to quit so much?
I don't know. I think it, well, there was some freedom. I think one of the things, like, when that, it was a night, I remember that. Like, it was a night, and it was around Emily was about to give birth. So it was probably December of 22 when I was feeling this. Um, Emily's my wife, by the way. And I remember her comment to me was like, "Well, you don't have to be a pastor."
Mm.
And I was like, "Well, no, I kind of want you to fight for me and be like, no, you can't quit, you know?" And she was like, "If you want to quit, like, we can quit." And even in that moment, I felt the freedom. It was just, I think what really helped was that, but then the weeping, like, it was like purging my body a little bit. Like, I don't remember how long I stayed in that, but I do remember feeling much better after I wept. Like, I feel like I was just holding it all in, and it was just, it was almost like, if I'm being honest, like vomiting. Like, how you feel better after you do, like, and so, dude, I don't even know how long I was in that, but it did pass with, like, the help of brothers, and then my wife, who was like, if you want to be done, but be done because you should be, not because, you know, you're going to let people down, right? Like, I don't know who said it, but it's kind of a leadership quote that sticks with me. Like, leadership is just understanding and learning how to let people down at a rate that they can handle it.
Mm.
Like, that's what pastoring is, really, right? It's like, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm just trying to do it at a rate that you can handle it.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful, like, just having a wife, having brothers. And like I said, I don't know how long that lasted, but I felt so much better when I guess I was bottling up emotion that finally the dam broke, and that's what happened. So I don't know how long I was in that, but I've had periods of that, right? Where it's like months you feel really great and I'll do this forever. And then times where it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this another week.
Yeah. I mean, you think back on that time, any like wisdom or principles or advice you give maybe to someone else who's maybe going through a season where they're not sure they want to keep doing what they're doing?
I mean, I do think it's great advice to give people the freedom to, like, well, maybe you don't need to do this forever. But at the same time, I wouldn't have want to quit in that moment. Like, pastors always say, like, don't quit on a Monday. Um, I definitely think there's good advice in, hey, let's talk about this, but let's talk about this in a week. And if you still feel this way, let's get, let's take the steps. And so there's wisdom in not jumping on just your feelings, because I think my feelings were valid. Like what I was feeling was real, but feelings also can lie. And it's like, it's not that I don't want to do this. It's that I don't want to do this specific thing. This season is hard. This doesn't mean that like, this is the trajectory of my job. And so I think just the wisdom in like feelings are important, but at the same time, you don't want to quit the night that you're weeping, because
Right.
you don't want to make any decisions, in that vein. And so that's one of the big things I would say is your feelings are valid, but also, hey, let's take a moment.
Yeah. It's interesting as you're kind of sharing your story. I think all of us view ourselves, our jobs, our careers, and our personalities as like not the other people are better at this or should be doing this instead of us. So, like, for example, I'm someone who's like, sometimes I get like frustrated with myself because I feel like I don't have the right temperament to be a pastor. For example, I don't care if somebody's mad at me. Like, I literally, I could not care less. Like I don't want people to like be mad. And I like I want people to like respect me. But if they don't like a decision we're making, I'm like, okay. Like I and so it's just funny, right? Because like sometimes I'm like, man, I should be more, empathetic and emotionally responsive. But I just think it's interesting, no matter who you are, where you are. It's like I think we're always telling ourselves a different version should be doing this thing and is better, and I'm not the one that's
Oh,
equipped to do
100%.
this.
100%,
Yeah.
because and here's a whole conversation that like, man, I'm even working through in like counseling and stuff, but like, do I care as much when my wife is upset with me? No. Like, it's people that like, it's not who cares if they're upset, but like, why do I care that church people are upset? But the people that I like, if Emily is mad, it's easy to be like, well, she'll get over it. And I kind of wish I would be like that with more like people in the church, who were like, why aren't we doing this? Like, why didn't the student ministry meet? And it's like, oh, that's because we don't have a student pastor, But I'm like, should I go hire a student pastor? Like, I want to make sure they're good, and like
Yeah.
do all this work for. So it's even interesting there of like, it's not my complete personality to care. It's just church people, man, and the pressure of being a pastor. Something there is like, let me keep them happy,
Yeah.
and you'll die by that.
So you've had a couple of really funny's not the right word, interesting experiences. Um, and I think one of them you mentioned was around this time, this first time you're really struggling to quit. You jokingly, although I don't know how much is this a joke, have the story about kicking a demon out of the church. Can you share just for everyone to maybe appreciate what was going on?
Dude, it was. I don't. It's so interesting because the pastors that I know will ask me about this, and I'm like, my answer is always, I don't even know where to start. But long story short, man, these people, this couple who's not married, show up at our church, and stay for about 8 months from like beginning to end. And the first meeting I have with them, I'm cool. Once again, like this whole dependency, right? Like, one of the things that I think you actually said, I credit you, Dylan. You're always like, when you're talking to people, like, never be shocked by sin. Like, don't ever be like, and for me, I'm like, I'm not above anything anybody confesses to me. Like, so, but they confess some stuff that I'm like, you may, I'm not the dude for you, man. Like, you need something else. Crazy theology. How just totally buying into this hookup culture, telling me intimate details about their experience, just crazy stuff. And over time, it just got weirder and weirder and weirder. And once again, I really care if people feel connected, and once I don't want anybody mad at me. But at the same time, I do like, I will brag on myself a little bit. Like, I do have a heart to like see people included. And so these are people that like, I knew that they would not function well in another small group. So they'll come to mine, and I can handle it. And like, I just want these people, I didn't want them to go to a home or somewhere, and naturally they're just strange people, and them to feel uncomfortable. So I was like, hey, come into my home, and let me make you comfortable. Like Emily was pouring into the fiance, they weren't married and they had a child, and it was just we were trying to care for them. Well, then things started to happen. Like he told me that it was his God-given call to challenge me as a pastor. And he told me that I'm just going to have to deal with some tough stuff in order not to flake out and grow. And I'm like, dude, this is not your calling. To which he responds with, oh, so you're God. You can tell me what my calling is. So that started a long, well, I need to back off a little bit because this is very strange. This is not what is happening here. And then there were some legalities that got involved in their life, like legal things were happening that they were trying to talk to us about. And we're like, we can't do any of this. And then they would disappear and show up. And long story short, it just came to a head where we were doing another round of signups for like home groups, which is our small groups. And I just, it came to a point where I'm like, look, your next step is not a home group. Like your next step is like professional counseling. And we as elders at Citizens, our wives, like want to care for you guys. And basically what we did was when they signed up, we reached out and was like, hey, we need to have a conversation because this is not your next step. Crazy, just crazy stuff. There's so many details that I have to leave out and some that I know I'm forgetting, but just crazy theology, crazy details of life. And so we tried what we thought was a better plan of care. Like, let's try this again. And that blew up in our faces. That blew up in our faces. More things came out. They started reaching out to other people in the church, saying things like, Adam's not helpful, so you guys can help us now. And I had church members reaching out to me like, what is happening here? Now let me caveat, these people were not church members. Like that was not going to happen at that stage. And so we just were asking them to take a step back, but also dive in a little deeper if they were going to continue to stay, because there was so much hostility towards me that I'm like, look, why are you even here? Like, you don't like anything I say. You fight me on everything. And and it just came to a head where I'm like, if you're going to stay, this is what it looks like. It does not look like home groups. It looks like professional counseling that will help you with. It looks like, conversations with the elders. It looks like submitting to our teaching. And it blew up in our face. I'll never forget one Sunday. That was a conversation we had. The following Sunday, we were just like, I wonder if they show up, because those conversations did not go well. Like, did not go well. Well, they show up at the end of service. And once again, we do communion every single Sunday. So they walk in as I'm walking off stage, and the band's coming back up to do one more song, and then we have communion, and then we end. I'll never forget, they come and they take communion. They show up at the end of service, take communion, and then as we're cleaning up, because we're renting some space right now at another church, and so there's some, we got to pick up chairs, stuff like that. I see them pulling people outside, and I'm like, all right, well, we got to go do this now. So we confront them outside, and turns out he was going to the church that we rent from, that we're meeting in their space. He went to their service first, trying to get that pastor to come talk to me. That didn't work. And then he showed up to cast me out of the church because I told him things like polygamy were not God ordained. Like, you can't just go hook up with anybody you want and expect your relationship with your fiance to go well. Um, he couldn't get past that. Like, you're not married. You're not married. You're engaged, but you're not married. And then there was stuff like, okay, you don't care about God's law. You only care about man's law. There were things like, hey, you can't. Well, I got to be careful what I say. There were some things that were going on that I called out that I'm like, this cannot happen. So long story short, man, for about an hour and a half on a sidewalk, he just grinned at me the whole time as we asked them to never come back. The girl is screaming, crying, telling me I'm the reason she'll never be a believer, because she was not a believer. And that was what was so hard. Like, we were praying for her to come to faith. Why she would never go back to church. We've never cared about her. We never did care about her. He told me that I was the wolf in sheep's clothing, that because I wouldn't let them in a home group, and he's like, she's not even a believer, and you're the guy that Jesus says tie the millstone around your neck and go kill yourself. Like, it was intense. And we had to like, and this dude has some psychological stuff. That we were not the first church he's been asked to leave. There's a record there. He's been in my home, and I'm just thinking like, this dude is not stable at all. And the whole time she screamed crying, because he didn't shout that stuff at me until they were leaving in the parking lot. but he's just grinning at me. And I'm like, this is so strange. And it was a horrible day. It was a horrible, horrible day. Bro, I walked into the church and once again, I wept. It was like looking back, it was almost embarrassing. Um, because there were people still cleaning up, but like one girl texted Emily, a lot of people texted Emily actually, because she had left and taken my daughter and, they went home and they thought my dad died because my dad had been sick for a while and they thought my dad died. Um, but it was, dude, it was emotion that like anger, I couldn't defend myself. Um, Sadness because we prayed and nothing changed. It's an emotion I've never felt, and kind of debriefing with a pastor, man. Like my default is everybody's a lost sheep. And one pastor that I really respect and love, he was like, "Man, not everybody's a lost sheep. Some people are goats, and some people are brought into your church to sow discord." And that's what this dude was doing, like going to other members. He's still, dude. He's still to this day. I got another pastor 2 weeks ago. I mean, this has been from the time we're talking about it, probably over a year. Um, he went to a church service of a guy in town and asked that pastor to meet about a heretical pastor in Kernersville that he's made posters about. So, I mean, I blocked him, but he's texted our elders like, "You guys aren't repenting," and so my biblical mandate is to cast you out of citizens. And so it's just it's crazy, bro. It's crazy. And like I said, some of the things that he's done is is just pure evil. Like I don't it's I don't call him a goat and I don't call him like evil because he didn't like me. There's some things that like I can't share that are just if you think of evil, he's done it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we didn't know that until he showed up and was with us for 8 months until we had to be like, you can't come back here. And it blew up.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things too. It's like in scripture, we're saved by faith, but our works demonstrate that. And
Oh,
for example, like we're about to do we're preaching through Titus as when this airs, Titus chapter 1, chapter 2. It's like don't listen to these false teachers, not just because their theology is wrong, but that their actions, their life is off. And so
oh,
like
dude.
you're
Yeah.
if you're not a Christian, one of the things that I, especially maybe the last 6 months or so, like a big soapbox for me, is like encouraging because I see this on social media, all those things, like trying to encourage believers that you should never listen to a non-Christian about what it looks like to follow Jesus. Because a non-Christian doesn't love
Yeah.
Jesus, doesn't know Jesus, and is not pursuing Jesus. And so what
Yep.
happens is like online, you get these like, Jesus would do X, Y, and Z. Typically, it's a caricature of Jesus that they probably haven't actually read the Gospels because it's like if you read everything Jesus says, some of the stuff he says is really hard. And so it's like, well, a real Christian would do this. And I'm not saying non-Christians are stupid, don't have wisdom, we should never listen to them. What I am saying is, again, if they claim to not love Jesus, don't care about Jesus, and don't follow him, don't have the Spirit of God living inside of them, we do not take as Christians, we do not take our directions from them. Now, Christians can get it wrong. Like it's not saying that Christians are always right,
Yeah.
but like you should not listen to a non-believer. I got a couple questions about this. As we're talking about like evil, demonic, we're kind of joking, but kind of not. I think in our secular Western world, it's like, well, that's just unfortunate, bad person. As you reflect on that, I mean, obviously, we're spiritual wars all throughout the New Testament, all throughout the scriptures. I mean, what's your sense or view on like the demonic, evil spiritual realms and how this kind of played out? What that guy's doing? I mean, I don't, how do you view it now?
Once again, bro, for the longest time, I was like, am I just not caring for this guy enough? Like he can cuss me out, and I never responded in that way. Like I never returned back what he gave to me. And I had this sense of like, I'm just not good enough pastor. Like, where am I wrong? And it was other guys, to be like, you're not wrong, bro. You need to protect your church. And it was like, oh, wait, not everybody is lost sheep needing to be rescued. Some people are just here to sow division, bro. I mean, there's just things like I didn't invite him here. I distinctly remember it was a great season in our church. Um, and they showed up and I truly believe the enemy sent him. There were even things, bro, like um and this is crazy. His smell was bad and his eyes were black. Like I'll never forget like how he interacted. And this is stuff I learning about his childhood things that were he was told and he confessed to this. At a young age, his uncle told his father, "You have the next Jeffrey Dahmer." And now part of that is like that sticks with you as a child. Like to hear that out loud. But the element of just how the evil one like grabs hold of people and like uses them as tools. Like this dude was only sowing discord, only, and I was like, and then like, that day talking to him on the sidewalk, like I say, he didn't say much, but when he was shouting verses at me, this spiritual realm, dude, there was one time I told him shut up. I was like, you stop quoting the Bible at me. You have no idea what you're talking about, and he stopped talking. Like it was very interesting. And in my mind, bro, like this is not my background. But like I didn't tell him shut up just because I was angry. But I'm like, this is evil. And like seriously, you have no power here. Like stop talking. Stop talking because what you're spouting is horrible. And so I mean it totally gave me a new perspective on like I think the enemy can sometimes send people into your life, into your church, into your whatever to just completely sow discord. I just today met with another pastor who has not the same story, but a guy he hired, seminary grad, trusted, great dude. Everything snaps a year and a half. And this guy is like, for the last year and a half, everything's been fake. And that guy's not the pastor of the church anymore. Like the dude who hired him, he was like, we had to walk away. It was too messy, it blew up. And so like John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. Like there's an enemy who hates my church, hates my marriage, hates my friendships, hates my family, like, and wants to destroy it. And Citizens is not my church, but let's just be honest. Like we lead these churches as like if the enemy can take me out, Citizens is affected next week.
Yeah.
And there's an enemy who wants to steal, kill, and destroy. And this was the first time that I'm like, oh, this dude's not just broken. This dude might have some like truly demonic things about him.
Yeah.
That we prayed, man. We prayed so hard that both of them would get saved. We poured out, bro. Like, and it got to a point where like it also, Dylan, it teaches me that whole thing of like, how do I say this? Sometimes people just don't respond to what we're praying and what I'm pouring out. And I have to be okay. Like I can't walk around sad that this guy didn't get saved. Like I hope he does one day, but if he's truly demonic, it was like you can't save everybody. And that whole like I'm gonna let everybody down, it's grown me a lot in that because this is like I pray to God it doesn't get worse than that. But that dude shouting at me, you've let me down. You're a horrible pastor, and I'm gonna get other pastors to come against you. Like that either crushes you or it grows you a little bit to where God give me I need you, that dependence. Like I can't do obviously I cannot do this without you. And so it was a horrible season.
And I think it's important for people to realize too. I think maybe the average non-vocational minister, pastor, Christian be like, well, that just happens at churches. It's like you need to know, like if you're a follower of Jesus, you are Satan's enemy. And so that
100%.
coworker that does that thing or the environment you find ourselves in, it's not neutral. It's not by accident. And so we should all be diligent and cautious and not be afraid. I mean, it's even like, I don't know, like we've been, let's see, we're preaching through Acts right now, and there's like times in Acts. I think First Corinthians, there's a couple passages where like this is very non PC, but this is biblical. We got to decide like are we gonna follow the Bible or not? Like Paul like talks about other religions. It's not just like false religions, but they're actually demonic. Like he
Why is
uses
that?
that words in First Corinthians. Like it's actually they're not just like he talks about how in First Corinthians they're not just worshiping like false images that are like wrong, but they're actually like demonic, and it's like the demons that are allowed to do it. So saying things like obviously following Jesus is loving is grace and truth, but like Islam is demonic, Hinduism is demonic, Buddhism is demonic from a biblical perspective. It's not that the people are awful or whatever, but it's just like these ideologies are actually demonic, and it's not neutral. And so wherever you find yourself in life and work, if you're having a struggle, a temptation, or whatever, to just kind of dismiss it as like, well, life is just hard. It's like no, there are evil spirits and principalities that are
Yeah.
actively trying to take you out. Genesis 4, the devil is crouching. He's like actively, he's not like passively, he's like trying to. Um, and so, yeah, I think we should kind of recover some of this like spiritual language. There's this guy I follow on Twitter or X or whatever, and he tweets a lot about like parenthood and dads and like men and why they're necessary. A lot of statistics. Because in our culture, like men are bad and they're toxic and they're patriarchal. Follow Jesus. And he always like, he'll like retweet these stories sometimes and just like say it's straight up demonic. And a couple of years ago, I'd be like, man, he's kind of being extreme, but he's not. Like he's like, this is demonic. Like he'll call like evil things demonic, as things that we would say, well, I don't know if I'd go that far. But scripture, I don't know how you I don't know. So I'm curious. Um, I know hindsight's 2020. You've learned from this. If you could go back, or maybe someone comes to your church and they start. I mean, I know you've been through this situation, so it's like, how would you go back and like handle it differently from the beginning, or maybe going forward if you have future situations, knowing what you went through? Would you do anything different, or how would you address it? You think?
Um, well, it totally challenged my thinking that everybody who's a first time guest should get a personal text from me and my phone number.
Hmm.
I would do that differently. Like, I think I'm very quick to give my life away to people. And like, it sounds very spiritual when a pastor's like, man, I'm just here. Paul talks about we're in Philippians right now. And so he's going to get there like I pour myself out like a drink offering, and it's like, sometimes I'm like, I need to be the doormat for everybody else's spirituality. And I don't like, there were red flags from the very beginning. I won't give my personal information out to people that I don't know like that. Cause I'm like, you have access to my life just because you're interested in my church. That's just not true anymore. Um, Number two, I think there's elements that are above my pay grade that I should have said that sooner. Like we talked about it, but there was really no room for any sort of conversation with this dude ever. It was just, here's what I have to say, and you better respond with what I want, or it's going to be all hell's going to break loose. So I think if I could go back, there are elements to look for that it's like, hey, this is a red flag. This is above my pay grade, and we need to kind of tackle that now. We need to set the parameters that like, I am not available at your beck and call to handle things that I am not equipped to handle. I'm not equipped to handle abuse. I'm not equipped to handle um, even like suicidal ideations. Like there are trained professionals that we will connect you with, but that is not my job. I can't do that. I'm not going to pretend like I've been trained. Um, and then, dude, I think there's just like, I've heard this before, but I do remember him telling me, I'm coming to Citizens because all these other churches are horrible, and I might give yours a shot. And I knew, because I've heard it from pastors
Yeah.
before, if they're talking junk about another church, you're just going to be the church that they talk junk about next. And it was true. And so there are just things that if I could go back to the very beginning personally, I would do, but also things I would say. Because once again, my temptation was like, I want to help everybody. I don't want anybody to be upset with me. And we were praying like, oh my gosh, we can see these people saved and their story will be amazing. And it's like, no, there are red flags from the beginning that I need to have a little bit more backbone
Yeah.
and be like, hey, this is just how it is. Like, you're welcome here until you're not, like these folks. But like, yeah, those are some things that I would go back and change because it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, demons are real. That's the takeaway from this. Demons are real. Now, you also mentioned after that walk back in the church weeping because you thought your dad died. You've been going through a
Yeah.
season of grief where he did eventually pass away. Can you just share? Yeah, I don't know. Again, to the extent you feel comfortable, relationship with your dad, he passed away, and kind of like what's the grooming process been like for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting. Dad was sick for the last 12 years with cancer, and there was ups and downs where like he would have surgery and he was good. Um, and then the last few years of his life, really, I mean, he was miserable, man. Like there were so many, it was side effects from medicine and things that cancer had caused that made him so miserable. Like the cancer was kind of like, yeah, it's there, but it's not doing anything. It's all the other things, how it's affecting your body that, he couldn't sleep. Like certain medicines would like make him itch constantly all across his body. Um, for the last year and a half of his life, every time he ate a meal, he threw it up because there was so much scar tissue. His cancer was in his stomach, and so there was so much scar tissue and buildup that like things weren't working properly. They took some of his intestines and then told him like, you're not a candidate for surgery. So like it was just hard, man. He felt sick all the time. And so, like I said, for 12 years he was sick, and I'll never forget. It was in September. It was on a Tuesday, uh, September 10th. My mom called me and was like, "I think your dad is done." And he had talked about it before, like he's just ready to die. And I'm like, "Dad's just talking." Like And it was a Tuesday. She was like, "No, I think he's really done." And so she came by the church. I was sitting in the office, and I was like, "Well, let's go talk to him." So we went to their place, and he was just sitting in his chair with his eyes closed, like just breathing hard. And so of course I walk in because dad and I had a good relationship. Like there were some things growing up that I had to grow up way too soon. But I mean, since I've been an adult, like it's been more of a friendship truly,
Mhm.
than father son. And there's some things that like, I'm still in counseling about it as far as like dad issues, like what he did say or didn't say to me or how he treated me. But like truly, everybody was like, were you close to your dad? And the answer was yes, like extremely. And so he was just sitting there and I'm like, so what are you thinking? And he just began to weep. He was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want to leave my family, but I can't do this anymore. He had rejected hospice 9 months prior to this. And so it was literally like a phone call away. Like, when you're ready,
Yeah.
we'll stop everything. He was on dialysis for 3 years, the last 3 years, and it was painful at this point. It wasn't really working. He wasn't taking anything for cancer. It was just like keeping him alive. And so they told him, like, whenever you're done, we'll stop dialysis, which is a kidney like treatment for people that don't know. He was doing it 3 days a week, and they were like, and you'll probably pass within a week. Well, he was done. He called hospice. We all did on that Tuesday, September 10th, and he passed away a week later, almost to the hour, on
Mhm.
September 17th of 2024. And so it was hard, man. That was a day that like will be etched in my memory forever. Is him weeping because dad didn't cry, and like weeping how much he's going to miss the family and how he felt bad. Like he was like, "I'm sorry, I'm giving up," um, and having to talk with him through these things, and then sitting in the kitchen as I listen to my parents like cry with one another, and um, and they weren't like lovebirds, like they were kind of roommates for a little while now, but still like it's just crazy. And so that was a hard day. And then like packing his bag for hospice, it's things like, does he need a phone charger?
Mhm.
How much underwear do we pack? Like, the nurse is coming like the last time he walks out of their place, like I remember getting in the car, like, this is the last time he's going to see this. This is the last time he's going to see this. So yeah, he passed away on September 17th. And yeah, it's been extremely hard. Like even in these seasons, it's been from the time we're airing this, it's been what, like 6 months, maybe. It was 6 months last month, and like, yeah, it's still extremely hard. Like I'm not good with sadness at all. I'm really good with
Yeah.
anger, but I'm not good with sadness. And it's been moments of just sadness. Like it's crazy how I'll go. There's not one day that I don't think about him. It's so interesting. Like I'm not sad every day, but
Right.
I think about him every single day, or at least I have. But then there's some moments where like grief really hits you again, and I think about like I'm 30 years old, and I'm like I'm gonna go a long time. I mean, you know this, Dylan. Like it's if I live 80 years, that's
Mhm.
a long dang time without my dad.
Yeah.
Like I have sisters with kids who are, all from we're about to have a new baby in 3 weeks to my oldest niece is 16, and thinking like, man, I have the kid, um, that's only going to see pictures.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
our new baby that's going to be born in a few weeks, like she truly will never meet him. Jane, our first, like was, she's 2.5, so she did meet him and stuff like that, but she's not going to remember him.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is just hard, like really hard. So yeah, it's been a season for sure where like
Yep.
I don't know how long I'm supposed to feel grief. Like I don't know how I'm supposed to respond with it. Like, you know, um, what I give myself permission to feel or do, or like there's all this stuff. And then bro, like there's so many like even beliefs about, do I even believe what I preach?
Mhm.
Like there was, I mean, it's still like there's days where I'm like, is his is he actually somewhere, or is he just in the ground?
Yeah.
Like there, like I've preached the resurrection for a while now, but now it's like real. I'm like, do I actually believe I'm going to see him again? Do I actually believe he is somewhere? And then, like, truthfully, my dad's story was like, do I actually believe that salvation is through confession and not through our good works?
Mhm.
Like, dad wasn't a bad man, but at the same time, it's only the Holy Spirit that I'm a pastor and not like
Yeah.
a bartender or something. Like dad was just rough around the edges. And I'm like, was he saved? We had those conversations that Tuesday in his, I'm like, are you ready? Do you know where you're going? And he said, absolutely. I'm ready to go be with Jesus in heaven where this is no more. And like he was, I'm ready to go. So I think he's there, but those are just real questions I'm asking. Like
Yeah.
I counsel someone else and be like, brother, you're going to see him again and it's going to be a rejoicing day. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like, do I believe this?
Yeah.
So it's just been, it's been very interesting. So
Yeah, man. It is hard. A lot of people know my story. Losing my dad when I was 19. It's like there's a unique perspective on it. Obviously helps you grieve, counsel people, I think, better, differently. I mean, the
yeah,
first year is just hard. The year first, everything's hard. It's the year first. And I remember, for me, situations are a little different. My dad took his own life, and there's a couple other things that were going on that year. But I was, so I suffered from depression, situational depression. So sometimes I get frustrated. People are like, "Oh, you depressed, whatever." It's like, no, there's depression is like it's like a thing that everyone says they have ADD, but they don't. It's like no, ADD is actually a diagnosed thing. Just because you have a short attention span does not mean you actually have ADD.
right.
And so I've been there, and I remember it took me about 9 months to start to feel normal again every once in a while, and then you start to feel guilty of like, well, should I feel guilty that I'm not depressed right now? Um, and it's man, it's just hard. It's just hard, and so I'm just kind of curious. Like, I mean, you've kind of mentioned a little bit, but how's that? Shaped you in terms of grief? What's some things you've learned the last 6, 7 months? As you walk through this process.
Oh man. Man, what have I learned? Well, I've learned that death is real. Like that's it's crazy how like I've lost grandparents and stuff like that. Like, but death didn't feel as real to me as it does right now.
Yeah.
Like sitting with a man who just couldn't take suffering anymore. I'm like, man, it gives me a human perspective and like more empathy. I think for like people who are walking through that. I've learned about myself through counseling that like I kind of suppress things. Grief isn't something I want to go through; it's something I want to go around.
Yeah.
So I'm working through that right now in counseling. Like, who am I? How does this shape me? How does this affect me? What should I feel? Um, but dude, like, yeah, it's still like 6 months in. I still feel like it was. Some parts feel like it was 10 years ago, and some parts feel like it was a week ago, and I'm not sure what to do with that. So
Yeah.
I'm currently like learning, thinking through counseling and through conversations. Like, it's given me a greater empathy for like people who have lost people because I mean I understand that like losing your parents is like one of those it's one of those deaths in your life that like sticks with you, you know. And so it's given me more empathy, but it's also created opportunity to work through some emotions and feelings in counseling. And so dude, I'm still learning through it because
Yeah.
I don't know how I should feel or how long I'm going to feel this way or all that stuff. So but it's
Yeah.
been hard.
So
I'll say
I
that.
I remember it's really hard to feel and to grieve. I remember again losing my dad in the way that I did. It was pretty sudden and traumatic and dramatic. And so
Yeah.
I remember hearing a lot of other stories of people who were sharing like, here's what I went through, that sort of thing. And to this day, man, and I talk about this a lot, like people that are grieving, like the importance of actually grieving, because people were share stories with me. Some stuff like was really intense, and some people would talk about it as if, hey, this is hard. It's always a part of my life. But I'm like, I'm moving forward as a part of me. And some people will share they were telling me things that happened to them like 10, 15 years ago as if it happened yesterday. And I was like, I don't want to be that person. I want to be the other person. And what I learned again through counseling myself, grief was like the people that deal with it, that weep, that face it, that just sit in it. That is so much harder to do, but that is the people that can move forward. And for me, one of the things I tell people is like, you never move on. This whole like, you just got to move on. No, you move forward. Like you're not gonna move on from your dad. I'm not gonna move on from my dad. I'm gonna move forward with the experiences, things I've learned, and yeah, it's just like man, you have to deal with it. It's kind of like it makes me think of this and the situations where like maybe a parent loses a child, which I cannot imagine, and but then
Right.
they leave their room untouched for like 5, 10, 15 years. I'm like that is the type of grief or not really grieving that will destroy you because you've got to face it and sit with it and weep and to cry. And so sometimes I feel bad, like as I'm recording this past week, talked to a couple who lost a baby. It was their first, and the baby, she lost the baby in the womb. And so, and like immediately, I'm response is, "Hey man, there are no words. I'm so sorry. I'm praying for you," that sort of thing. And just because I've been through it so much, I begin to be like, man, I really hope that people are not giving them verses and trying to make them feel better and just saying anything. It's like, man, just sit and grieve and be with them and don't talk.
Dude,
That's what
I'm
people
telling
need.
you, well, so it was February 18th, and I know this because my wife's birthday is February 17th. So this past February, we had a couple in our church in their 20s, knew the diagnosis halfway through their first pregnancy that the baby would not live, and the baby lived. Sorry, like she carried the baby to almost full term,
Yeah.
and me and Emily were at the hospital when she had the C-section, and he lived about 2 hours. And there's not, holding a dead baby is not something I ever thought I would really do, if I'm being honest. And I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to face a loss that is going to have great impact on you. Like, I do know what it's like to like lose my dad,
Hmm.
and I would never be like, so I know exactly what you're going through. But there is an element that they do trust that I do know grief.
Yeah.
Like, but in that moment, you're right. It's like, I don't want anybody to tell me why dad didn't get better, or like, why he chose to go to hospice. Like, I don't care about any of that. And this couple didn't care about theology in the moment. They're just like grieving the loss of a child that like they've carried for 9 months, knowing this is what's going to happen. And so there's elements that like, you know, in all these situations that we talked about, like that goes back to the whole dependency thing. Like, and I'm not saying I like people have it harder than me, but I always like to say the hardest thing I'm going through is the hardest thing I'm going through. So like, I don't get to say Dylan has it harder than me. That's
Right.
that could be true, like if you put it down on paper, but
Right.
that's not true based on my actual reality. And so like everything I've gone through, the hard things specifically have taught that dependency aspect, but also is just like growing me as a pastor. Like, I do understand that I've dealt with some stuff that a lot of pastors don't at the age of 30 years old. Like, I get that personally, ministry wise, etc. But it is doing something in me, even if we don't know what that is right now, right? Even if it's like there's no words for that right now. There might not be words in 15 years. That's fine. But man, that's the whole like God. I'm dependent that you are, as Paul would tell us in Philippians, continuing the good work that you started, even though the
Yeah.
work that I see around me right now sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good word. It's like I think I try to encourage people with a lot, especially if they're currently suffering or grieving, is that grief is not a competition. So again,
Yeah.
given my story, sometimes be talking with someone they're going through something, and they'll say, "But it's not like what you went through." And it's like it doesn't matter. Listen, if something is hard for you, it's hard for you. It doesn't matter what someone else went through. Like it's
Right.
irrelevant. And so like
Right.
again, I guess our culture is like we don't do grief well. We kind of suppress our emotions. We're not very communal, so we do it by ourselves. And it's like it's okay to just say this is hard and it's
Yeah.
hard for me, and I just need to address that without trying to compare it to someone else to try to downplay what I'm going through.
Right. I mean, it would be the equivalent of you being like, well, at least you got to say goodbye to your dad. You know,
Yeah,
like, what are
yeah,
you talking about? Like, what? That is so stupid to compare the two things. Like,
yeah,
but yeah, we do it all the time. And people don't do that all the time, but it would be easy for me to be like, well, at least I got to say goodbye. So Dylan, I know yours is harder. And it's like, do elements make something more difficult? Of course. There's always challenges based on context. But like, no, man, there were two losses that I had one dad and he died
yeah,
a lot sooner than I wanted him to.
yeah.
So that's hard.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing, and a lot of people can probably relate to just the grief. Maybe it's kind of we end our time. One of the things I'm really passionate about is men and dads and how they're important. In fact, the episode just before this, where this was Jared Trumbo, which Jared, he's in Raleigh. We talked about parenthood a little bit, and we talked about kind of like safetyism, and kind of the coddling. And he, I think, rightly says part of the issue today is essentially kids are being raised by two moms because our culture is like men are bad, they're toxic, they're
Mhm.
patriarchal, women are awesome, and so dads like are not allowed to be dads with their kids. And I've seen this a lot too. It's like especially like with the firstborn, mom. God created men and women. Women are more nurturing. Guys are a little bit more risk it, sort of thing. And what'll happen, and I don't know if this is your experience, what you've seen, is a lot of times it's like mom wants to parent a certain way, and she doesn't let dad parent how he wants to parent. So he doesn't get to do anything. He gets kind of told no. And then what happens is 10, 15 years down the line, dad is like, well, I've been told I can't do anything. And then mom's bitter. It's like, well, you didn't let him parent. So I don't know. I mean, I think losing your dad is part of it. Obviously, being a dad of girls. What do you, I mean, how has that shaped your thought about being a dad and raising your daughters? I don't know if that's shaped anything since losing your dad and kind of thinking about yourself and being a dad yourself.
I mean, it certainly, in a sense, gives me perspective on time.
Mm.
Like I was thinking, God, see, I get way more emotional when I don't have kids.
Yeah.
It was like 2 weeks ago, and I had this moment of grief because I was giving Jane a bath, and I'm like, one day I'm going to leave her,
Mm.
and that sucks. Um, which once again, this is where someone jumps in with like the theology of the new heaven and new earth, but I'm like, that's not what I'm talking. Like,
Yeah.
no, dude, that's not what I'm talking about. And so our perspective on like, man, I have a very limited time with these kids, and like, I'm grateful that I have a dad that I miss.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really grateful for that. Like, some people lose their dad and they don't care. Um, and that's what I want. Like, I want my girls to love me, like me, and miss me.
Mm.
Like that's what I want. And you know, it's just yeah, it's so interesting when it's like I just yeah, the perspective of time. Like the Lord could take me tomorrow, and so I want to do the best that I can with every day that I have to love them well and raise them to love God and to like me. Like
Yep.
if they like me at the end of the day, man, like I'll never forget Andy Stanley talking about like one of his main goals was that his kids, when they left the house, they would want to return home and visit.
Mm.
Like he was like, I want them to like me and want to come home and see, like, hang out with me. And like,
Yeah.
man, that's what I want. Like, that's what I want. And so also it's funny. Um, Emily totally lets me parent, and I am the overprotective helicopter dad. And she's like, she's fine. Like, let her go. And I'm like, no, 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 no. She can't fall. She cannot fall. Like, she's jumping on the couch, and I'm like, Jane, 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 be careful. Emily's like, she's fine. Even if she jumps over there, she's fine. I'm like, no, she's not. She's gonna fall. And so
Oh,
like I'm like, no, you sit down. And Emily's like, okay, Dad, I said to sit down. Like, you got to sit down, Jane. So it's so funny because we were talking about that. And Emily's like, I thought I would be the overarching, like, careful.
yeah.
I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. And then it
Yeah.
goes into like the theology of loving our kids. Like, I know my dad loved us, and like one of the ways he showed that was like, I mean, there were multiple times. I'll never forget one story. I have older sisters who were like 14 years older than me, so I was a kid when they were teenagers. Um, and one of a guy in the neighborhood called one of my sisters when they were in like middle or high school a name, and so they drove past the house, and Dad went down to the car, and long story short, he punched this teenager. Um, and like got arrested and all this stuff. Like, but I'm like, no, I get it. I'd kill somebody for my daughters. Like, I really would. Like, it is so funny how my theology of like, I don't know, like, no, no, no. If it's you or her, it's you.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy how like this primal instinct like raises up, especially I think having girls that I'm like, I would. I'm not saying dads with boys don't feel the same way, but I'm like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. She can't skin her knee, and you also can't be mean to her, or I want to break your neck. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy, and so in a good way, I want that
Yeah.
too. Like, I want them to know that I'll protect them.
And I think too, again, going against what's politically correct, it's okay. So I have a son and a daughter. I love them both equally, and but I view them differently.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it's okay. It's okay. Our coach's like, you can't do that. It's like no, like right now, for example, Roman. our neighborhood's not the best. So he just turned 7, and it's not like the best bike riding neighborhood because it's a little hilly, and sometimes like we live around this bend, and sometimes and so we let Finley, our daughter, she's about to turn 9 or about to turn 10. We let her ride around the neighborhood by herself wherever she wants to go. It's like I want her to be independent, and she'll be fine. And we've told her like how to be safe, whatever. And so Roman has just started riding his bike, and he'll go on a bike. This literally happened last night. He's riding his bike without the training wheels, so he's going a little faster. And I just tell him, hey, yeah, I like to take walks, especially after dinner, and I'll be like, hey, if you get too far, just turn back around and come this way. And so he's like doing it. And so last night, Christina and I were taking a walk, and she was not. She was like, he's going too far. I can't see him. But what's funny is like sometimes he's still a little bit wobbly, especially because our neighborhood's a little hilly. And I'm like, he'll fall and he'll be fine. Like I don't. And like with my daughter, I'm like, she'll fall. If I'm like, oh, I don't want her to fall. Like I'm just gonna be okay.
Right.
But I'm like, bro, I'm just like, no, bro, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, dude.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just I
yeah,
do
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's okay to acknowledge that that's different because men and women are
Yeah.
different, and so whatever that's worth.
Yeah, no, 100%, bro. That's how I feel. Like I got friends who have like young boys, like, kids in our age that are boys. And it's so funny how they're like, this kid's climbing on top of our fridge and we just let him like just be crazy.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like we want to raise a man. We don't want to raise a wuss. Like we don't
yeah,
want to raise a wuss. But for daughters, I'm like, no, 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 no. We better protect her at all cost.
yeah.
Like, so
That's
yeah,
funny.
that's good that you say that. Cause that's how I don't have sons, but I have almost 2 daughters now. And I'm like, no, they cannot fall off their bike. Like I will be there.
Yeah. Well, if we were to summarize this conversation, I'd say be dependent on Jesus. Demons are real, and you should grieve if things are hard in your life.
Yeah,
That's
that's
there
right.
we go.
That's right.
So, Adam, thanks for what you're doing. I appreciate your faithfulness and how you're loving Jesus in Kernersville, and thanks for this conversation.
Thanks, man.